they messed with the wrong person, petty revenge served cold. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed, a soundtrack to my growing unease. For the past 6 months, I'd poured my heart and soul into Project Chimera, a complete overhaul of our company's aging infrastructure. It was complex, challenging, and exactly the kind of problem I thrived on. And, to be honest, a welcome distraction from the mess my divorce had become. Marcus Bellwether, my manager, always seemed to hover nearby when things went well, basking in the reflected glory. He was all smiles and backpats in meetings with the CEO, Janice Kramer, strategically omitting specifics about who actually solved the roadblocks we encountered. I'd shrugged it off, mostly. Marcus was Marcus. A master of corporate theater, but ultimately harmless, or so I thought. Brenda Hayes, a senior developer on my team, was a different story. She'd been at the company for 15 years, seen it all, and possessed a deep, almost encyclopedic knowledge of the legacy systems. She was usually my sounding board, a reliable colleague with a dry wit. Lately, though, she'd been distant, quiet. She'd avoid eye contact when I'd talk about progress on Chimera. I chalked it up to her impending retirement. The initial phase of the project went live last month. Seamlessly. The servers didn't crash. The users didn't revolt. It was a resounding success. The entire team breathed a collective sigh of relief. Marcus, of course, made sure to personally present the results to Janice, emphasizing his vision and his leadership. I saw Brenda in the back of the room, her face unreadable. That's when the subtle changes started. Small things. A line of code altered in a module I'd written, just enough to introduce a minor inefficiency. An email I was supposedly copied on, mysteriously missing from my inbox. My invites to key planning sessions with the architects kept getting lost. I started documenting everything, every anomaly, every discrepancy. I knew something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Paranoia, I told myself. The divorce was making me see things. Then came the day the whole thing blew up. We were demonstrating Chimera's advanced features to Janice and a few other VPs. The system had been rock solid in testing. Bulletproof. I was confident. Marcus, naturally, took the lead, pointing and gesturing with an air of authority he didn't possess. I stood slightly behind him, ready to answer any technical questions. And then it happened. The system froze. The screen went blank. An error message, glaring red, popped up. Silence. Janice shot Marcus a look that could curdle milk. Marcus, without missing a beat, turned to me. "Elias," he said, his voice dripping with concern. "What's going on? This was working perfectly just an hour ago." My mind raced. I hadn't touched the system since the last successful test run. I don't know, I stammered, trying to regain my composure. He shook his head, a picture of disappointment. "I'm afraid Elias has been having some difficulties lately," he said, addressing the room. "His performance has been unpredictable. We've tried to be supportive, but this..." He gestured to the frozen screen. "This is unacceptable." Brenda, who was standing beside him, nodded in agreement. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I noticed some unusual changes in the code earlier this week. I meant to bring it up." My blood ran cold. "Brenda?" Janice, her face like thunder, cut in. "Elias, I'll see you in my office. Now!" I followed her, numb. I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on my back. My career, my reputation, everything I had worked for was crumbling around me. The meeting with Janice was brief and brutal. She accused me of negligence, incompetence, even sabotage. She informed me I was suspended, pending a full investigation. I tried to defend myself, to explain that something wasn't right, but she wasn't listening. Marcus had already planted the seed of doubt, and Brenda's confirmation seemed to seal my fate. I walked out of the office in a daze. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now, mocking. My divorce was one thing, but this was a professional execution. I drove home in silence, the weight of the accusations crushing me. I went inside, poured myself a stiff drink, and stared out the window. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly helpless. Then, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I called Dave Miller, my best friend since college. He was a cybersecurity consultant, a wizard with computers and fiercely loyal. Dave, I said, my voice tight with anger, I need your help. I've been framed. He listened patiently as I recounted the events of the day, the subtle sabotage, the public humiliation, the suspension. That's bull, he said when I was finished. That slimy bellwether has been gunning for you for months. I knew it. Don't worry, I'm on it. Give me access to your company laptop and credentials. I'll dig into the logs, the emails, everything. We'll find the dirt. Dave worked tirelessly over the next few days, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He was like a bloodhound on a scent, relentlessly tracking down every digital trace. He found it. Evidence of tampering with my code, using Marcus's account. Emails deleted from my inbox, specifically those related to the project's architecture and design. Log entries showing Marcus accessing my computer remotely during off hours. It was all there, meticulously documented. He didn't even try to cover his tracks very well, Dave said, shaking his head in disbelief. He probably thought he was too smart to get caught. I felt a surge of anger, mixed with a grim satisfaction. They had underestimated me. I called Sarah Chen, the HR representative assigned to my case. I had initially dismissed her as another corporate drone, but I had sensed a flicker of doubt in her eyes during the initial interview. Sarah, I said, I have evidence that I was framed. I need to show it to you. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near my house. I presented her with Dave's report detailing the evidence of tampering and the manipulation of the system. Sarah listened intently, her expression changing from skepticism to concern. She asked pointed questions, probing for weaknesses in my story. I answered them honestly and directly, providing her with all the information I had. This is serious, she said when I finished. I need to verify this independently. If what you're saying is true, it is, I said firmly. And I can prove it. Sarah initiated her own investigation, independently verifying Dave's findings. She discovered that Marcus had a history of taking credit for other people's work and creating a toxic work environment. She also uncovered evidence that Brenda had been pressured by Marcus to make false statements about my performance. Meanwhile, I consulted with Mr. Abernathy, a seasoned employment lawyer. He was calm, strategic, and unflappable. He listened to my story, reviewed the evidence, and gave me a grim nod. You have a strong case, he said, but be prepared for a fight. They won't go down without a struggle. On Mr. Abernathy's advice, I also secured all my bank records and credit reports. In the divorce, there was a considerable amount of animosity, so he cautioned me that Marcus could potentially leverage it. I knew that this was a gamble. A lawsuit could be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. But I had no choice. I had to clear my name and expose Marcus for what he was. The confrontation came a week later. Sarah summoned me, Marcus, and Brenda to a meeting in her office. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Marcus sat across from me, his face a mask of feigned innocence. Brenda sat beside him, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Sarah began by summarizing the findings of her investigation. She detailed the evidence of tampering, the deleted emails, and the inconsistencies in Marcus's story. Marcus's facade began to crack. He shifted in his seat, his eyes darting around the room. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice trembling slightly. This is all circumstantial, there's no proof. I stood up. Oh, I think there is, I said, my voice calm but firm. I presented the forensic report Dave had prepared, outlining the technical details of the tampering and linking it directly to Marcus's account. Marcus paled. Sarah turned to Brenda. Brenda, she said, her voice gentle but firm, is what Mr. Thorne is saying true? Brenda hesitated, her eyes filled with guilt. She looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Marcus. Finally, she broke. It's true, she said, her voice barely audible. Marcus, he told me to say those things. He said my job was on the line if I didn't. Marcus exploded. You stupid, Sarah cut him off. That's enough, Marcus. You're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Marcus stood up, his face contorted with rage. He glared at me, his eyes filled with hatred. You haven't won, Thorne, he spat. This isn't over. He stormed out of the room, leaving Brenda sobbing quietly. The next day, Marcus was fired. Brenda was demoted and required to undergo ethics training. The company issued a public statement acknowledging my innocence and apologizing for the false accusations. It was a victory, but it wasn't enough. Marcus had tried to destroy my career, my reputation, my life. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I filed a lawsuit against Marcus for defamation, wrongful termination, and emotional distress. The legal process was long and arduous. Marcus fought back fiercely, denying all the allegations and attempting to discredit me. His lawyers dredged up details from my divorce, painting me as an unstable and unreliable employee. But I was ready for them. Mr. Abernathy and I had anticipated their every move. We presented a mountain of evidence, including Dave's forensic report, Sarah's testimony, and Brenda's confession. The trial was a grueling ordeal, but I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. I presented my case with clarity and conviction, exposing Marcus's lies and demonstrating the damage he had caused. In the end, the jury sided with me. They found Marcus liable on all counts and awarded me a substantial sum in damages. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice. It was about clearing my name and holding Marcus accountable for his actions. After the trial, I received a flood of job offers. I chose to accept a position at a smaller, more innovative tech company where my skills and integrity were valued. I moved on with my life, leaving the toxic environment of my former workplace behind me. A few months later, I was scrolling through a social media feed when I saw a post about Marcus. He was working as a cashier at a gas station, his face gaunt and lined with bitterness. He was a shadow of his former self, a cautionary tale of ambition and greed. I felt a pang of something akin to pity, but it was fleeting. He had made his choices, and he was now living with the consequences. I closed my laptop and went for a walk. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I was finally free. I had been wronged, betrayed, and humiliated, but I had fought back, and I had won. Petty revenge served cold, indeed.